All right, I think we're just about ready to get started, everybody. So thank you for attending. Welcome to this panel session on how SurePath enables successful implementations globally, right? So the goal in this session is for us to hopefully entertain you and enlighten you about what the heck is SurePath and what do we mean by a successful implementation, and really for you to leave the session feeling like you made a wise choice in how to spend your time in Vegas. All right, that's a stretch goal, I apologize. Okay, but it's a good thing for me to set out and say. So we'll start off, as with all the sessions, with the safe harbor statement, because we probably going to mention some features and functionality through this discussion that may be covered under our safe harbor. So, all right, there's the formalities over with. We'll kick it off and just provide a little bit of an intro on who we are and why the heck we're sitting up here to talk to you about this topic, right? So just provide a little bit of context to you about who we're speaking today. And I'll go first. So my name's Ant Swindells. I guess you can read that from the slide and tell from the picture. But I've been at Guidewire for some 11 years. I'm based out of a home office in Charlotte, North Carolina. And for most of my time at Guidewire, I've been part of delivery services in both hands-on and leadership roles, leading the Americas practice. More recently, my organization moved over to be part of product development and operations, which means that the content that comes out of my team is now officially part of product, which is a good thing. And with an expanded responsibility for very related areas. So we kind of own how to drive adoption of the capabilities coming out of product, how to update those capabilities once you get deployed into production, and also the cloud delivery, the strategy portion of it from a delivery perspective, which is released as SurePath, which is what we're talking about today. So enough about me. Let me hand over to my panelists and let them introduce themselves. I was going to introduce them, but they were scared about what I was going to say. So I figured they could do it themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Ant. So this is Anant Manu. I'm the practice director for cloud delivery enablement, which is a part of Ant's organization. Like Ant, I've been a part of Guidewire for 13 years, majority of that spent in delivery services. What that means is hands-on implementations, and that included the responsibility to look after all the Guidewire implementations in the Midwest region. Most recently, I've combined that experience with proximity with our product development organization to partner with them much earlier in the GA cycle so that we can produce implementation collateral ahead of the GA or in alignment with GA to be laser focused to drive one thing, which is Guidewire Cloud capability adoption. With that, Renato.
Thank you, Anant. So my name is Renato Quintal. I have been with Guidewire since 2007, so it's going on 15 years now. Very first implementation was with Sentry, with Ben. I live in North Florida, and I'm responsible at the Cloud Delivery Strategy team for solution standardization. So my team creates the pre-built content, both functional and technical, that is published on Marketplace. As well, we're responsible for publishing the cloud delivery standards. Zach.
Thanks, Renato. I'm Zach Griesbach. I'm the practice director of testing and performance framework at Guidewire. I joined Guidewire approximately 10 years ago. And prior to that, I was a partner. And prior to that, I was a Guidewire customer. At Guidewire, I was working for Ant until just recently, previously, and now I'm working with product management with the testing frameworks themselves.
All right, so with that, I think you'll agree we've got a bunch of smart guys on stage, right? It's usually not good when we sit next to each other because it's Ant and an Ant. It's a little confusing, but there you go. All right, so what we're going to do is start the session off with a pretty kind of bold claim that says we have 100% successful go-lives. Now, if I stopped there, you might say, I don't trust that guy, right? He's making things up, right? So, but you got to read the small print. What we say is that 100% of successful go-lives that have leveraged Guidewire delivery services and our proven SurePath approach. That we know is an accurate statistic that we track to. Now, it's easy for me to say that, but unless I define to you what I mean by success, then and what is SurePath, it probably doesn't mean much to you. So I'm going to spend a bit of time just unpacking what we mean by success in SurePath and then open it up to the panel to kind of drill into some of those details and what it means to you. So first of all, on success then. So anybody can claim to be successful by delivering a project on time and to budget. But what did they compromise? If they didn't deliver the value that you set out and the reason why you got the project approved, then was that truly successful? I would argue no, right? So what we say is being successful is on time, on budget, and delivering the promised business value aligned to the strategic imperatives that you set out to achieve when you approve the project. So that's what we mean by success. Now, SurePath helps you on that path to success by building an approach that enables you to go live faster. We want to get into production faster, unlock the value of the products, and we want to implement smarter. Not claiming that not everybody's smart, just saying that SurePath is going to help you take the smartest path to success. What we mean by the smartest path is things like making sure that all the people on the project have got the right certifications, making sure that you're taking advantage of the out-of-the-box product capabilities or pre-built solutions that Renato mentioned in his intro, the Guidewire Cloud standards following best practices. This is what we mean by the smartest, the implement smarter, and what SurePath enables. So hopefully that's a good definition of success that you would agree makes sense. So now let's talk about what do we mean by SurePath. It's kind of interesting because even within Guidewire, some people get confused about what SurePath is because we use it to kind of mean many different things. So Mike Rosenbaum said to me one day, he says, hey, Ant, I need you to just put SurePath on one slide. And that doesn't mean to say you can just use a tiny font, okay? So this is an attempt at explaining SurePath in one slide. Now, basically, SurePath is the umbrella name for our proven delivery approach, right? So what's shown there in the circle is the approach, and SurePath is about charting your path to success, so basically setting yourself up for success. As you go through the implementation, through delivery, it's about guiding you through all the phases of delivery and providing you with making sure that you're aligned with the standards, that you can get into production, and that you're following best practices. And then as we do that, we're making sure we embed quality to make sure that the delivery is, it's both fast and it's predictable. Right? So we want predictable results without any compromises, and we want to make sure that everything's laser focused on delivering value, the reason why you did the project in the first place. So that's what we mean by our proven approach and the approach we take. But it's more than, SurePath is more than just the approach and the methodology. It's also about the artifacts that enable you to execute on that approach, right? So on the right side then, those four squares, I guess they're squares, actually show what are the different artifacts that we consider to be included as a part of SurePath that the investments that we make here are actually delivering. So one of them is the Guidewire Cloud standards that are published now as a part of product documentation. So my team and part of the organization are defining those standards and making sure that the way things are implemented are aligned and actually adopting the latest product capabilities. And they're doing so in an upgrade-safe way to make sure that when new releases come out, you can continue to adopt the latest capabilities. So the standards cover not just implementation and coding standards, but also processes and procedures, testing standards, security standards, and that type of stuff. Everything related to delivery. I'm talking about delivery standards. To supplement the standards, SurePath also includes a lot of great delivery enablement content. So this is all of the content that augments the documentation and the education and provides that last mile enablement to really focus on those globally diverse use cases. So we've got guidebooks, we've got process flows, user stories, thousands of artifacts that make it so that you can truly accelerate your implementation. So a lot of the things you've heard so far in the conference around, microbop and UBI solutions, they all follow this SurePath approach, right? Talking about solutions, SurePath also includes pre-built solutions that are standards compliant. So the solutions, they're published onto Marketplace. You'll see them on Marketplace called things like SurePath content, right? What that is bridging functional gaps, perhaps in product capabilities because we're phasing functionality in over a series of releases, or it's common integration patterns that are very common and typical globally. These are the pre-built solutions, and they're all about driving down the total cost of ownership. And then finally, we have the experience-based process tools, which includes things like our experience-based estimation tools, project planning tools, tools that assess the health of the project and allow you to make course corrections for when things go off track, and also tools that help you focus on value. This is what we mean by SurePath and everything that it entails. So before I get the panel engaged, I just want to talk to the applicability of SurePath. And just to start out by saying that SurePath applies to all engagement models. So whether the project is Guidewire-led, partner-led, or customer-led, SurePath applies. Okay? You might not realize it sometimes when you're using SurePath because we're not sure what the definition of SurePath is in some cases, right? It gets confusing. So I just want to point that out, that it's applicable to all the things we talk about in terms of the collateral that comes with SurePath is published out externally onto Guidewire Community and Marketplace. And we actually spend time training our partners on how to use some of the SurePath tools. So with all that said, I think it's a good time. These guys aren't here to just look good, right? They're actually here to show you how intelligent they are. So I'm going to engage them now in a series of questions on this particular slide and just kind of ask them to share some examples of where SurePath usage across a few areas. So I'll start with you, Anant, and say, can you share some examples related to our standards and general SurePath collateral?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Ant.
Good job. Right, next one.
So our standards, they are available on docs.guidewire.com, and they're segmented in 5 different categories. So when we talk about standards, I do want to take in some examples so that we can paint a picture of how applicable and how they help the implementation teams. The example which I want to use is from our implementation standards category related to APD. It is APD adoption and usage, right? So APD stands for Advanced Product Designer. You've heard that in our conference this year. Actually, it was introduced in 2019 in Connections. But it started its life as an accelerator. So now it's a part of the out-of-the-box functionality. So there's a journey which some projects teams took in order to adopt the accelerator, the new capabilities which are there out of the box, as well as they're on the journey to adopt the new capabilities as well. APD usage standard, it enables the implementation teams to align with what's coming, the new capabilities which are coming in the APD tooling, so that they do not close any doors. So that is where that APD standard helps. Now, on the SurePath content itself, standard is one thing. It does not go into the granular detail of what hands-on implementers need, the developers need. So related to APD for SurePath content, we've published 2 great assets. One is FAQ. I think there are more than 100 questions in there, plus implementation guidance on how to incorporate APD in modeling your products. Granular level information, which all the teams, right from SMEs to the BAs, to the developers, to the testers, to people who are promoting some of these assets in different environments, it's included in those documents. So those 2 being examples, I want to double click on SurePath content as a whole. There are 120 plus SurePath assets, which include white papers. There are about 59 white papers, data sheets as well. There are 30 plus data sheets, which augment, which provide the implementation teams, which is granular implementation details. This is one part. The other part, 2 other things which I want to mention are pre-built solutions. Right? They are ready to take in configurations and implementations which further drive down the implementation timelines and cost. SurePath content. Another part is the content itself, which is available on Marketplace. Right? So all of these are, like you said, laser focused to drive down costs, and they are available to every engagement implementing Guidewire.
That's some great examples there. Thanks for those, Anant. So Zach, I want to kind of lean over to you now and say, you can see he decided to use a different shirt than us, and he's got quality. So clearly this guy's got some focus on quality, or maybe he's got quality issues. We'll find out. But Zach, do you want to share some examples specifically related to quality to build on what Anant just talked about?
Yeah, I think Anant said it well, but what I'll highlight is testing and quality. And the first thing is that there's test content available on Marketplace. And that's there to help accelerate the adoption of first the testing frameworks themselves, which you can shamelessly come join me in the next breakout session right down the hall next, and to help accelerate the adoption of the SurePath features. All the SurePath features should come with tests. And as an example, the reference tests that are out there for the GT framework are out there for designated functions. And that's on policy, billing, and claims for GT API and GTUI. And you can use that to supercharge the adoption of your implementation, whether you're a net new implementation or a transition customer, because that's the minimum part of your contractual compliance as a subscription customer. And what does that actually save you? It varies depending on your path to cloud, but it's 30 to 50% that we're finding with our customers and partners and having conversations by just using those reference tests.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. 30 to 50% savings just for that. That's amazing. So, and this is kind of the power of us providing this through SurePath. So, Renato, can you share some examples related to pre-built solutions and tooling?
Sure, and so based on your introduction and what the team has already shared, I think it becomes evident that the SurePath has such an extensive coverage that can be said that every project uses SurePath to some extent, right? And in that, we have a dedicated team in Ireland that is focused on the tooling aspects that you referred, right? What we are mentioning here is our experience-based estimation tool, other tools like the conceptual sprint planner that breaks the user story into the sprints, and then it goes further into the automation of loading those user stories into the correct sprints into an LLM tool that we use, such as Jira, right? Another example of investment that we have made is we have partnered with all of our major implementation partners in enabling and aligning with them the estimation process, right? And the benefit that our customers get from this is that now they are able to compare bids apples to apples, right? Because we are aligned on that what is a point and what are the assumptions behind that point when you're implementing a user story. To provide some concrete examples, not picking favorites, right? But just to right? I mean, of the global applicability,
right?
Yeah, the global applicability of it, right? For example, GFT used our estimation tools to create an estimation for a cloud implementation in France, and LTI used the same estimation tools to provide a cloud estimation for a cloud implementation project here in the US.
Yeah, that's excellent. So I think there's some great examples there of what we mean by SurePath and the great collateral that's available. So I'm going to spend some time on this slide. This is kind of just trying to summarize some kind of key proof points and concrete examples of what are some of the benefits that you can get by taking advantage of SurePath, right? So we've kind of broken them down into driving down costs, driving adoption, and how you stay current. This is what SurePath is helping you to do. It's available to you to use, okay? So, and the way I'm going to talk to this is I'm really going to get the panel to kind of cover the key points on this slide and kind of pick a set of random questions for them to kind of answer. So I'll start with an ant again. And if I look at the picture in the middle, that green one, basically says, we've got dev, EA, and GA. Okay, so hopefully he's going to explain what the heck that means. It also looks like it shows delivery services linked to product development, and it kind of seems to imply that delivery services always have to be involved in each implementation. So can you just elaborate on what those things mean, and do we always have to use delivery services, as that seems to imply?
Yeah. Thanks, Ed, for the question. So in that middle picture, the green picture, where we call out dev, EA, GA. So when we're developing a product, the engineering team goes through a maturity cycle in which some parts of a capability, they are available a little bit earlier than the full capability being GA. So that availability and the maturity of that is being called out as dev or EA or GA. Dev is, you would also see that term as DA, means developer access. EA, early access. GA is general availability itself.
Okay.
So SurePath teams working closely with their product dev teams, and that's the cycle which that figure is trying to call out, is that as the teams partner with customers for capability parts, which are either dev, DA, or EA, the SurePath team wants to harvest that implementation information, implementation experience, and any kind of feedback. That's the whole part why these programs exist, so that product can improve and SurePath collateral in lockstep with that improvement can produce collateral, for example, like white papers, KCS articles, or sometimes these are just hands-on implementation guides or presentations themselves, so that the teams, once the capability is GA, the teams can have, they should have, they expect to have easier time adopting that capability. Less anxiety adopting that capability. That's exactly what the SurePath focus is in these DA and EA programs. Now, when you talk about DA and EA programs, there is a model, a resource model, which we have to use so that we can do exactly that. SurePath can do exactly that to harvest all that experience. So that is why for these programs, they will be Guidewire-led, but then they do include multiple team members as well, which can stripe across anything. But they have to be Guidewire-led so that we can build in SurePath collateral.
Okay, so we're basically incubating it in SurePath and then scaling the enablement for GA, right?
That is true. That's the only way to scale in this fast-paced world.
That makes a lot of sense, right? So there's a power of, that's really why SurePath became part of product, actually, to make sure we could incubate it and work very closely with products. That's a great answer. And then, Renato, I'm going to move over to you now and say, just staying with this drive adoption, can you just elaborate a little bit more about how SurePath really accelerates adoption?
Sure. So we have talked many times about the pre-built content that we have, right? So that pre-built content, it follows all of our cloud delivery standards. As well, it's aligned through the process that Anand just explained. It is aligned with our latest cloud capabilities, right? Because we are working very early on the release cycle with product engineering, right? I mean, on that content. So what this means in terms of accelerated adoption is that customers that are consuming that pre-built content are making use of that latest capability. And not only they get the benefits from the pre-built content in terms of a faster implementation, lower risk, a predictable delivery, but they can use that implementation as example of what to do on their specific implementation on how to use, be that a cloud standard or a new pattern, a new capability. So as an example, the pre-built content that is being released for integrations, customers can use it to see how do I integrate using the integration gateway that is early access now, but is going to be GA in the future. Using that pre-built content, they can see it, as well as they can see how the adoption of the cloud delivery standards are implemented, like, for example, the structured logger.
Okay, that's really good. I don't know if you guys are watching up here, but Zach's sitting there and he's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I really need to add on to that answer. So I can read his body language. So do you want to just pile on a little bit to what Renato said there, given it obviously probably a quality angle?
Well, I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to talk about testing and quality, and so I think I'll add here that the GT framework is entirely about reducing IT complexity. And it's going to accelerate the delivery of value by standardizing the non-differentiating heavy lifting that all of your IT teams need to do. And that's there to help assure that you can have scalable operational growth. And that's focused on early defect detection, fast feedback on changes, as well as having collaboration to enable your implementation and project teams. And then the framework itself is common, industry standard technologies and that's all there to make sure that we can help pull in new features faster. And so that way, if you didn't have the same skill set, you can help transition skills or upskill your people faster as well. And last but not least, probably most importantly, the whole aim and intent is that we have well-tested implementations as an input for faster and faster updates.
That's a good job you're doing that, because we own the updates in the cloud too, so thank goodness
That's right.
for that answer. But that was probably a bit too easy for Zach, that one. So I'm going to go a bit harder now. I'm going to move over to the stay current side, and I'm going to stay with you, Zach, while you're talking. And there's that stat there which basically says, that the SurePath content is, available and released within 30 days of GA. So I think the question I'd have for you, Zach, is why is that such a good deal? And if I went and sat in the audience over there, I'd be asking myself, 30 days? Why is it not on day 0, right? Because Anant said he's working way left. Why is it not on day 0?
That's a good question. And
That's why I asked it, actually.
so I think we can start with the fact that we have shifted the definition of done to include adoption. And at a high level, that probably doesn't sound like a lot. But underneath that, if I use an example, Guidewire owns, as you said, the product and the ongoing operations. And that made us change a lot about how we think about delivery and the ongoing operations, and how we have to then think about the adoption of every feature to get there. And that changes how we then think about reaching 0 to build all of that enablement collateral to make sure that those features are adoptable and require those features to be adoptable to get there. So when you have a GA release, our customers are doing pre-project planning, and during that pre-project planning, we can guarantee that they will have all the enablement that they need. So please understand, I am saying that 0 is the goal, and we're aiming for that. However, they never really need it on day 0 of when we launch the GA release, and we will intend and still use every day to continue to be flexible up until we get to day 0. But we will aim at 0 until we can get there.
Okay, that makes a huge amount of sense. So I think we're pretty good on that side. I'm going to move over to the driving down cost side, because this is something that we all want to make sure we do, is focus on TCO. So I see a pretty bold claim in there, like 9,000 plus average hours saved on projects. So I'm going to kind of give this one to Renato and say, is that applicable? Are we all going to be able to save 9,000 hours? Is that representative of what's possible? How common is that?
Yeah, so the 9,000 hours, right, is based on a representative case. Of course, is based on the scope that you are implementing, right? But every customer making use of the pre-built content can expect a significant savings in terms of hours, right? We just ran through an exercise now of a project that is starting now in November, and their estimations, they had a more reduced scope, so as such you can experience, it's over there it says average, right? So in this case they have a reduced scope. Their savings was reduced, but it was still in the 7,000 hours saving. And this allows the customers to focus really on their strategic differentiators, right? Now we have an ambitious goal, right? I remember the session from this morning, right, where he said about commit and then figure it out. Right? We have an ambitious goal where we have committed to reducing our estimates by up to 50%. Right? I don't know who made that commitment.
Yeah, I wonder who made that commitment. Right? But guess what? It's not impossible.
Yes. Right? So what this means is that now we are focused on this pre-built content where we can, even on the quality side, right? And we are reviewing our estimations, the assumptions, making it more prescriptive, using the pre-built content in order to achieve what is not impossible.
Okay, good. That's good. I like that. So let's just stay with these estimate savings for a moment. I'm going to go to Anant this time. So if they're using a partner, are they going to get the same kind of savings as what Renato's talking about, even when a partner's involved?
Short answer is yes, but let's double click on that. Right?
I thought you might.
Yeah. So, but the devil is always in the detail, right? When we say content, I do want to include SurePath methodology itself. Right? So we have revamped, should say that, some of the SurePath methodology aspects of implementation, where now we assume that workshop topics which are related to the out-of-the-box capabilities, they would not be a part of either POCs or something like that, because in the end, what we saw was our customers or our implementations were taking that out-of-the-box functionality. So all that dev cycles, we have eliminated that from our methodology. So now by default, out-of-the-box functionality is taken in. So that's part of the methodology itself. Now the content, this content is available. We mentioned marketplace or other avenues as well, pre-built implementation configurations. They are available. All that combined is what's going into these savings, and they are available to partners as they are available to Guidewire teams.
Okay, that makes sense. So assuming they use all that content,
Yes.
they're going to get the same savings.
Yes,
okay,
absolutely.
Good. That makes a lot of sense. All right, so Renato, we keep talking about this pre-built content, right? So you might just want to elaborate a little bit on the types of pre-built content that exists, and also really just talk a little bit to, is that available globally, or is it just based in the US? Is it US-centric?
Okay, so we have done an analysis of our content that is published on Marketplace. And although there is content that is US-specific, but over 85% of the content published has global applicability, right? I'm referring to pre-built content like our SurePath components library that has content such as I already mentioned it before, the structured logger, admin data loader, and on the integration side, we have content for document production, document management, electronic signature. All of this is global applicability. Now, if we take a step back and think of all the additional content that SurePath provides in terms of the methodology and tooling, then we are getting upwards of 90% with global applicability.
That's great. So we're taking a very global focus. That's awesome. I'm going to go over to Zach and give you an opportunity to say, with increased release cadence, we're back in this drive adoption in that yellow box down the bottom about scaling knowledge transfer. So can you just talk a little bit to how does SurePath help with scaling the knowledge transfer to the teams?
Okay. That's a good question. And I think it's an interesting question because whether you're a customer or partner, scaling knowledge at the pace that we're at today is difficult. And Guidewire has been doing it by focusing on champion programs and with our partners badge programs. And internally, we've been focused on creating self-sustaining communities. And to use an example, our champion program for quality, aims to embed quality in everything that we do, and that's because quality is everybody's responsibility. And we move forward by putting quality first on everybody's project without compromise. So what does that actually mean to us? Really, at Guidewire, we focused our champion programs by upskilling hundreds of our people with just-in-time training. And then we took these champions and we put them into communities, such as using technology like Slack channels and Slack to take these communities and make sure that they were self-sustaining within each other. And then we made sure that they had dedicated FaceTime globally with different regional times using FaceTime with them and water cooler chats, office hours. And in these dedicated times, we made sure that no questions were out of bounds for their roles and what they're doing. They could come and talk about contracts, come and talk about resourcing, come and talk about technology challenges. The main thing was we had to provide advisory to the resourcing challenges around that topic and just make it easy to know if I had 30 minutes, this is where I needed to show up and talk, or I could go to the Slack channel and have a conversation. And then we'd work through the challenges until we got better competency in these areas. And last, with our partners, we have these badge programs. These are just tremendous, but I'll call out a shout out to the testing standardization badge. And this is a rigorous badge program, so keep an eye out for the partners who have a testing standardization badge. One of the things I'll note for this is that in order to get it, there's an adoption plan. And this adoption plan, on average, has taken our partners that have achieved it over 3 months just to assemble the adoption plan as part of their application process. And as a benefit for those partners who have achieved the adoption plan, they have monthly account alignment sessions with Guidewire on their cloud accounts that they have, and they have quarterly strategic alignment sessions so that make sure that we're all pointed in the same direction. And I realize this is an inclusive answer of everything that we're doing, but it does lay a foundation for just some of the things that we're doing in Guidewire to keep up with ourselves and stay aligned with our partners.
Okay, that's awesome. Let's just round this session out with an ask and Ant. First of all, where do we go to get this stuff, right? So we're talking about all this great content. Where does everybody get it from?
Recently, we've started to announce the SurePath content as it becomes available or as it is updated in community.guidewire.com SurePath group. So if you log into community on the right top, but one from the right icon would be groups. You click on that, there would be a SurePath group. It has an announcement which captures 3 or 4 articles or update to standard or other implementation material. It's curated content, not only in SurePath, it is being shared in other forums as well. So that is one place. That is how teams can get familiar with or closer to SurePath updates. This technical content is also available in guidewire.marketplace.com.
Okay, so we got 2 places to go get it. It's all freely available. It's all searchable. We've got the forums to know some of the stuff. But just to build on a little bit more about how they stay current with the latest information, perhaps you might just want to close out with that.
The Guidewire teams?
No, so how do the customers stay current?
Yes.
Because we're changing the content all the time. We're publishing new updates. How do they know what's new?
The 2 forums which I mentioned, SurePath and Marketplace, they are there, but we have other forums as well. We have developer.guidewire.com, right? That is another forum to stay current with whatever is evolution SurePath, and other areas are going through Guidewire. I do want to mention that in SurePath, I should have shared that we have a SurePath overview course which goes in more detail in what SurePath includes and what it does not include, because that is the cue for anybody consuming this content to seek out other avenues. Because within SurePath, the community.guidewire.com, which I was mentioning, it goes to great length to curate that content so that anybody can click and it automatically takes them to all different places within Guidewire.
Yeah. So and actually that SurePath overview course, we are going to be publishing out new versions of what's new, like we do with the product and say what's new in Dobson or what's new in Elysium. We're going to publish out new versions of kind of what's new courses for SurePath. So, but I think there is a course that's freely available. You just go to LMS and search for SurePath overview, right? There's like 90 minutes where you can just get an overview of everything end-to-end that's available to you and help you to know where to find the stuff. And then there's, the full course is about a day and a half, and that's what people who execute on projects would use to know how to follow the SurePath approach and take full advantage of SurePath. So strongly recommend to you to go take that course. You don't have to be... It's just freely available. It's on LMS, right? On the standard education site where you go to get all the product certification courses, et cetera. It's all there as well. So, and we'll continue to keep that updated. I think we're just about at time. So I just want to thank you. I hope that this has given you a good insight into, how do we set projects up for success and how can SurePath help you? It is really about helping you be successful in your implementation journeys. So, but again, feel free to reach out to us, ask us more questions in the hallways or on the booth. And thank you very much for choosing to spend your time with us today in this session. Thank you.